investments. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. And Max, I'd first like to find out what the investment case for Africa is for what you see from your research.
Right, good morning. Well, clearly Africa offers for British firms, as you were saying, a young population, so there is a huge interest in investing in consumer goods and services for Africa. But more importantly is in terms of economic development for Africa, the development of its manufacturing sector is an area that have received a lot of political attention in the continent. Specifically the UK can support that development through its business and professional services and insurance services and financial services. So clearly there is a mutual agenda between Africa, its development, its transformation agenda, and the need to have the UK to diversify its investments into other regions.
All right, but from your conversations with CEOs, though, what are they telling you about the perception risk that they have about Africa?
Well, clearly, I mean, it is a challenging environment. In some countries, the security situation brings additional cost to firms, and that makes investment projects not profitable enough. So clearly, that is an issue. But also, there are other issues associated to the investment climate, the constant, in some cases, some countries, changing regulations that are frequently unconsulted and sometimes hard to apply because they weren't consulted. Also, the taxation, not necessarily the level of taxes, but many companies has highlighted that they feel that there isn't an equal, a common ground with respect to the domestic firms. They think that they are subject to more enforcement of those regulations and taxes than the local firms. So these are the sort of general issues. Then there are specific issues. Some countries has other issues more specific that require some more a tailored type of approach.
Yeah, because when you look at Africa, I'd like to understand that the investors understand that it's 54 countries on the continent, and do you think that they're understanding the level of diversity on the continent?
Well, I mean, clearly in some cases there is an understanding. However, when you look into the figures, what you found is, specifically in the UK, is that more than 50% of the stock of investment, British investment in Africa, is on the extractive sector, either oil or other mining. In any cases, particularly concentrated in a few countries, notably South Africa and Nigeria. Nigeria very specific on the extractives. So clearly, there are cases, companies that are seeing the opportunities, that are seeing that the continent is a place to be, that in many cases they might consider that is China in 1980, for example, so it's a place to be now. But of course, I mean, there is in general a perception that it's a challenging environment, that is a perception and it's right to invest.
All right, but looking at finding areas of synergy, how would you say it's a win-win situation and moving beyond just talking about aid to investments?
Well, clearly, I mean, if Africa wants to develop its manufacturing sector, that this is at the top political agenda in the African continental free trade area and the African Union and in the countries, it will require the development of a strong services sector that supply that manufacturing. And this is talking about accounting services, financial services, insurance services, business, etc. And the UK has an expertise in that area, where clearly investments in those areas by British firms will provide that sort of support to the manufacturing sector in Africa.
All right, but when you look at how this, investments are going to take place, is there going to be much knowledge sharing, or is it just a case of coming to build, infrastructure and then having them to be run by British people?
Well, I think that the view is having a wide spectrum of actions. I mean, in some cases, this could be the development of more equity type of investments. So basically, the possibility that investors here and basically the common people in the UK can invest in African firms, something that is quite complicated now, but also they need to bring capital into Africa, building facilities, but also bringing the expertise that British firms has in many of these sectors. So it's quite a comprehensive package that you have to look at.
All right, and thank you so much for your time, Max. We'll keep an eye out because we're watching the summit closely, and if we get anything, we'll keep reporting that. Thank you for your time. I've been speaking to Max Mendez-Parra. He's the Senior Research Fellow at the Overseas Development Institute.